Hey everyone, Justin Conroy here, and welcome to the first video in my series on how to stop living paycheck to paycheck. And in this video, I'm going to teach you how to make a very, very simple budget. Now you may be wondering, why do I go straight from living paycheck to paycheck to how to do a budget? And I go this direction because I've helped a lot of people with their personal finances. And in my experience, two of the biggest issues with people living paycheck to paycheck is simply, number one, they don't have a budget. And number two, they typically don't even really know what a budget is. And in my world, having a budget is the first step in getting your personal finances in order. If you clicked on this video, my base assumption is that you are either not seeing the type of growth in your personal finances that you wish you would see, or you are living paycheck to paycheck. And let's be honest, if you're living paycheck to paycheck, this sucks. This is horrible. You know, it's one of these things where you're stressed out about it. If you're married, your spouse is stressed out about it. You work really, really, really hard all the time, and you never seem to get anywhere. And this is a horrible, horrible way to live. I've been there, and it's awful. So in order to fix this problem, the first thing we're going to have to do is understand the question. What is a budget? Now, the first thing to note here is that depending on who you ask, you're going to get widely different answers on what a budget actually is. So I like to start with the basics. If you look up budget on Google, and I'll put it up on the screen here, you will get an estimate of income and expenditure over a set period of time. Now, if that doesn't make too much sense to you, don't worry, I'm here to help. That's what this is all about. Now, I said before that the definition of a budget really depends on who you ask, and well, it's my video, so I'm going to go ahead and give you my definition. And that really is just a written plan showing the amount of money that you plan to make compared to what you plan to spend over the course of 1 month. But let's see it in action, shall we? In order to demonstrate this, we're going to need to talk about a very specific situation, because everyone is different, and if we don't start somewhere, we're never going to get anywhere. So let me introduce Karen. Okay, Karen is a 24-year-old math teacher in the Houston, Texas area. She's single. She lives in an apartment by herself, and she gets Starbucks every day on her way to work, and she likes to hang out with her friends on the weekend. So let's go ahead and start that budget for Karen. Now, if you remember my definition, the very, very first part of the budget is simply to have a written plan. And I want to make the point here to say that, you know, you're going to be seeing me do this on a spreadsheet. And by the way, I will link the spreadsheet that I'm using down below. But I don't want anyone to get scared by a spreadsheet. If you don't know how to use a spreadsheet, don't worry about it. Pull out a sheet of paper and start using paper. Go download Dave Ramsey's app, Every Dollar. Go download YNAB. Go download Mint, QuickBooks, or it really doesn't matter. The point is it really doesn't matter where you do your budget or how exactly you do it, as long as you have one and you have a plan. That's the whole point. I'm going to use a spreadsheet. In general, I'm going to teach spreadsheets because I believe that by doing it in a spreadsheet, it forces you to understand exactly what's going on. You could get the same thing from paper. I really don't like using the apps myself, but that's just me, and that's what I'm going to teach. So let's go ahead and start that budget for Karen. We talked about the fact that she is a 24-year-old math teacher. Has been teaching for about 2 years. And in the greater Houston area, they make about $52,000 a year. Okay, so I'll type that into my cell. Okay, now that's gross. So we have to factor in income tax. And for that, right now, her tax rate is going to be about 17%. So I'm going to multiply this by 0.83. And that should get us our yearly value, which you can see there is $43,160. And I'm going to divide all of that by 12 so that we can get the monthly rate. Okay. Now, I'm doing this on the spreadsheet. I'm calculating from the annual. But let's be honest, if this is your budget, go back last month and see how much money you made and use that number here, assuming that you have a steady paycheck. If you don't have a steady paycheck, you'll have to make some assumptions. You'll have to make a guess on, how much you're going to be pulling in. But you should have a pretty good idea. Go back to some previous bank statements, average up some numbers, and see how things go. Okay, so for Karen, I've put here side gig, but really you could call this tutoring, because maybe she tutors on the side. Maybe she has a couple of students on the side that she actually tutors. So Karen on average is able to pull in about $100 a month in tutoring. So we'll go ahead and type that in, and I've got the formula here summing everything up. So we've got almost $3,700 in income that we expect Karen to have at the end of the month. So that's the income part. So let's go ahead and jump into these expenses, because if you remember the second part of my definition, it's all about having a plan of the expenses that you intend on making over the course of 1 month. Okay. Now, if you're doing this for the very first time, like if you've never had a budget before in your whole life, I highly, highly recommend that you pull out some old bank statements or credit card statements or whatever the case may be for you, and use that as a guide as to try to predict your budget for the month. People are creatures of habit, If you're going to Starbucks every day, that's going to show up on your bank statement, and that is going to be something that you can see and then plan for. Now, I will say, if you don't use debit cards or credit cards and you don't have any records of these transactions, you will have to do some math and try to estimate based on your habits. And only you know you, so maybe we'll do one example like that with maybe the Starbucks, but I'm going to use a reference of Karen's bank statements for the past 3 months and take averages to figure out what we expect her to spend on various categories in a given month. So let me go ahead and jump into that right now. Let's start with car insurance. So Karen does drive a car. She drives a very cheap car, but she has to pay insurance on that. At least here in Texas, that's required by law. So she pays about $80 a month to her car insurance provider. Regarding car maintenance, that's a really tough one, but we've, again, went back in time and kind of calculated what she usually spends on things like oil changes or, transmission services. And we figured out that she typically spends about $30 a month on those types of services. Some months are higher, some are lower, but we're going to take an average and use 30 as a plan amount. Okay. Car payments. Again, she has a relatively cheap car. She does have a note on it though, and she does pay about $220 a month to finance her car. Okay. Car washes. Karen does like to have a clean car, so she typically goes about once a week to the local car wash and cleans it all out and vacuums and pays them some money to do that. Cell phone. She does have a cell phone. She's a single user. It is quite expensive from her carrier, so she pays about $95 a month for that cell phone. Karen, believe it or not, is actually not really all that into clothes or shoes, so she typically doesn't spend money on clothes unless she needs it. So we'll leave that one as a 0 for now. Dates. I mentioned she is single, so she is kind of on the dating scene. Not all guys are gentlemen, so she does have to pay sometimes. And she typically pays about $100 a month for, the dates that she goes on. She is currently out of school, so she's not really paying much on education. So that's typically a 0. She's renting an apartment, so she doesn't have an electricity bill, so that's a 0. Entertainment, like I said, Karen does like to go out with her friends. She often, goes out on the weekends and gets, steak dinners or sushi, and ends up spending quite a bit on entertainment. Sometimes she goes to the movies, that sort of thing. Fast food for Karen is a category that we had to have. So Karen does have a pretty bad fast food habit. It really amounts to about $400 a month in fast food charges. And so we like to track that separately for her. If you don't have a fast food habit, then you probably don't need to have a fast food category, but it is something that we like to track for her. Fitness, she has a gym membership. She pays about $50 a month for. Furniture, she typically does not buy furniture, so we'll leave that as a 0. Gasoline, again, on average, based on the bank statements, we get about $200 a month in gasoline. And for gifts, again, some months are higher, some months are lower, but we do look at about $50 a month in gifts based on prior months and taking the averages. Groceries for Karen amounts to about $450 a month. Haircuts are usually about $50. She gets one haircut a month and pays someone a good sum of money to do that. Hobbies, she does like to play console games, so she usually buys about one new console game a month. So we'll plan on $30 a month in hobbies. Home goods, things like paper towels, toilet paper, these sorts of things, she usually spends about $50 a month on. Again, she doesn't have home improvement because she's renting. Same with home repair. Internet, she does pay good money for. She pays for the high speed, high dollar internet, which really amounts to about $100 a month here in the Houston, Texas area. Medical, she is on medication for a couple of things, so she pays about $50 a month for prescriptions. Rent, she has a single bedroom, really nice apartment. She pays about $1,350 a month for that. Natural gas is part of the rent, so no problem there. Online storage fees, I believe she pays Google about $10 a month for some online storage. Starbucks we'll come back to because I want to show you how to do the math on that, but she does have a pretty nasty Starbucks habit that we have to have a separate category for. Toll roads, she typically spends about $50 a month on toll roads getting to and from work because of where she lives. Water is part of the rent and work-related expenses. Typically she has to buy school supplies for the kids. Unfortunately, that's not part of any sort of stipend, so it comes out of her own pocket. Pens and paper and things for her students. All right, so let's go back to that Starbucks. So let's calculate what this is because it really kind of averages about the same for Karen. So let's say you go to Starbucks every single day like she does, and you spend $5 or so per drink, and you do that, like I said, once a day. So let's take $5 a drink and multiply that by 7 because you do it every single day, and that gets us your dollars per week. So I'm going to multiply that by 52 because that'll get us per year, and then divide that by 12. And that gets us $152 a month in Starbucks. And as you can see at the bottom there, we finally have calculated our total expected expenses for the month based on a normal month, and we have come up with $3,847. Now let's compare that to the income and see what we have. Oh, Karen. See, this is the problem. If we go back to the beginning and remember that this is a video that's part of a series called How to Stop Living Paycheck to Paycheck, guys, this is the problem. This is it right here. So let me explain what's on the screen first. Cash flow. We haven't really talked about cash flow yet. I don't want to scare you with a definition. Just trust me on this. Cash flow is important. We will talk about it in a future video. It's one of the most important metrics that we could possibly talk about in terms of budgeting. And it is nothing more than just income minus expenses. And what this tells us is how good or bad we're doing. We want cash flow, which in this case is negative 150. We want this to be as positive and as large as possible, right? This will mean that we are living well below our means. And in Karen's case, she is not living below her means. She is actually living above her means. She does not make enough money to support the lifestyle that she has. So typically what happens for Karen is that, she will get her paychecks, and at the end of the month, she has no money left. And this is the reason right here. This is the reason. We have no plan. We have no plan on what we're going to make. We have no plan on what we're going to spend. And lo and behold, when we take some averages and figure out what we normally spend on things, it looks like we're spending too much money. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but this is the reality. You know, and the beautiful thing about budgeting, and this is why it's so important, is that you can see this. You can see clearly what the problem is. We are spending too much money. We don't make enough money to support the lifestyle that we lead. I mean, and there's simple solutions to this. If you remember back on the expenses, I'm looking at it on my screen here. We had $400 in fast food. What happens if I just stop going to Jack in the Box and I plug a 0 in? Suddenly we're at $250 and we're doing okay, right? We're doing good. I mean, of course, you're going to have to add in maybe another $50 for groceries, so I'll do that, you know. But we're still doing good. Maybe you cut your Starbucks in half. Maybe you don't go every single day. Maybe you make some coffee at home half the week, and then maybe you get Starbucks the other half. So let's cut that number in half, right? Maybe you don't spend so much on sushi and steak on the weekends, and you do something a little bit cheaper with your friends, and we cut that in half. Okay, and you can see I'm making very, very, very simple adjustments. I'm not doing anything drastic here. We're pulling back on our lifestyle just a little bit, and suddenly we have a $400 a month cash flow, a $400 a month surplus. Now this is the key. Does that mean we can go and blow $400 on anything we want? No, absolutely not. That's not the point, but that is beyond the scope of this video. Stay tuned for future videos where I'll talk about what to do with that $400. But the point is, again, is to have the budget, to understand your plan, and when you see a problem in your plan, reevaluate your plan and figure out what you're going to do to make sure you have a surplus at the end of the month. That is the key. So I hope this video was helpful. As you can hopefully see, a budget is nothing more than a comparison of your income and your expenses over a set period of time so that you can understand in detail where your money is coming from and where it's going. So that as a result, if you're living paycheck to paycheck, or if you're not seeing your financial goals happen the way that you want them to happen, so that you can understand why they're not happening. So that's the video. If you liked what you saw, please give me a thumbs up down below. Subscribe, and if you want to know when I make new videos, go ahead and click the little bell as well while you're down there. So as always, I appreciate your time and support, and thank you for watching. Have a good one.